Let me take you back to a time before backspace keys, before spell check, before screens. The clack of typewriter keys was the everyday soundtrack of business. Every memo, every letter, every invoice, all of it hammered, mistake by mistake, onto paper. And a mistake wasn't just inconvenient, it was destructive. One wrong letter and you started over again, or you reached for a razor blade to scrape the page, leaving a scar of fibers that screamed error. In Dallas, Texas, a young secretary named Bette Nesmith was living that reality. She wasn't anyone's idea of destined. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't famous. She was a single mother, raising her son on a modest paycheck, doing her best to keep a job that gave her just enough to get by and never enough to exhale. She had a steady hand on the keyboard and talent with a paintbrush from years of dabbling in art, but in the 1950s, the office didn't reward creativity. It rewarded speed, accuracy, and silence. And then, an inspired moment, not a lightning bolt, not applause, a window of opportunity. Outside the Texas Bank and Trust building where she worked, Betty watched sign painters at their craft. They weren't terrified of mistakes. When a line went wrong, they didn't start over. They painted over it. Layer by layer, stroke by stroke, they corrected the error with a clean coat and moved on. Betty didn't call it genius. She called it obvious. Why can't typists do that? If artists could correct with paint, maybe secretaries could too. That night, in her kitchen, she mixed water-based tempera paint, the same kind a child might use in school, into a small bottle. She slipped in a brush. The next day, she tucked the bottle into her bag and smuggled it to work, keeping it a secret. The first time a letter went wrong, she did not sigh. She did not scrape. She did not start again. She painted a tiny square of white over the mistake, waited a moment, and typed the right letter on top. Clean, quiet, saved. No one clapped, but Betty knew. She just made office work easier for millions of people who didn't even know her name. At first, she kept it to herself. You don't announce rebellion in a bank, but secrets are hard to keep when they solve problems. Other secretaries noticed that Betty's pages came back pristine. They asked questions. She handed them small bottles of her homemade blend, labeled by hand. Mistake out. Soon, the demand outgrew the desk drawer. Co-workers asked for a bottle, then other departments, then other offices. People took the little bottles home and whispered to friends, "There's a lady at the bank with this white paint that erases errors." From her North Dallas home, with a kitchen blender and empty nail polish bottles as packaging, Betty began to fill orders at night, her teenage son Michael and his friends helping pour, cap, and label. In 1956, she sold her first batch, and the side hustle became a thing, a business, a promise. Here's the part success stories like to skip. The struggle stayed. The money didn't rush in like a miracle. Betty was still a single mom carrying a heavy life. She took night classes to complete her education. She worked all day in the bank and all evening at the kitchen table, mixing, testing, fulfilling small orders. She was navigating a new kind of machine, too. The electric typewriter, faster, less forgiving, a terror to any typist with human hands. That pressure, that fear of losing her job, sharpened her focus. Necessity wasn't just the mother of invention. Necessity was the mother of her courage. As Mistakeout caught on, Betty did what every underdog does when the stakes rise. She looked for help. She perfected the formula with advice from a local chemistry teacher, iterated on the drying time, and experimented to ensure her white film blended invisibly with standard typing paper. By the late 1950s, demand was strong enough to push her to formalize. She sought intellectual property protection, and in 1958, secured a patent. Soon after, she rebranded Mistakeout with a name that sounded less homemade and more universal, Liquid Paper. The idea that began with $1 worth of tempera paint and a nail polish brush now had a registered identity and a clear future. But success can offend the places we outgrow. The bank, where Betty had quietly used her invention for years, tolerated the little bottles until her attention split too obviously. In a story that sounds like a myth but is well documented, her boss fired her in 1958 for devoting too much time to the business she ran after hours. Betty went home stunned. Then she did what resilient people do. She turned a closed door into a factory gate. If she couldn't be a secretary and build liquid paper, She would build liquid paper, full stop. The orders kept coming. Secretaries talked. Office managers called. Buyers took interest. By the early 1960s, Betty's small operation outgrew the kitchen table. Production moved to a backyard metal outbuilding, then to a proper facility. The numbers tell the story. By 1964, liquid paper was moving an estimated 5,000 bottles a week. By 1967, sales hit the $1 million mark. By 1968, Betty cut the ribbon on a Dallas headquarters and plant, an automated line capable of producing millions of bottles annually. This wasn't a novelty anymore. It was infrastructure. It was in desks and drawers from New York to Los Angeles, and soon around the world. And Betty didn't just build a company. She built a culture. Long before family-friendly workplace appeared in HR manuals, she insisted the liquid paper headquarters include a childcare facility and a library. The message was simple and radical. Employees aren't cogs, they're people. Give them dignity and support, and they'll build miracles with you. By the mid-1970s, liquid paper was everywhere. Secretaries and executives, students and journalists, anyone who touched a keyboard of cold, stubborn steel, everyone knew the little white bottle with the slender brush. In 1975, to keep up with demand, the company expanded into a larger, highly automated plant, churning out an estimated 25 million bottles a year. What started as a kitchen hack had become a global staple that quietly erased embarrassment and bought back time, page by page. You can measure impact in money, and we will, but first measure it in positive influence. Liquid paper rescued millions of workers from the tyranny of perfection. It lowered the cost of trying again. It gave people the freedom to keep going without tearing up everything they'd built. That's not just an office product, that's a philosophy. Try, fix, and continue. The money came too. In 1979, 23 years after that first label that read "Mistake Out," Betty sold liquid paper to the Gillette Corporation for $47 million. It wasn't a Silicon Valley headline. It was bigger in a way. An everyday fortune built on an everyday problem, solved by a woman who started all alone at a kitchen table. She didn't hold the wealth tightly. With the proceeds, she formalized her giving. Earlier, she'd established the Betty Claire McMurray Foundation, 1976, and soon added the Jihan Foundation, 1978, channeling support to women in the arts and entrepreneurship, funding ideas and creators who just needed someone to say, yes, keep going. She'd built a product that erased mistakes. Now she built platforms that removed barriers. If her name sounds familiar beyond the white bottle, there's another reason. Her son, Michael Nesmith, became famous as a member of the Monkees. He inherited more than wealth. He inherited her appetite for ideas and used the Jihan Foundation to convene thinkers, artists, and innovators in the decades that followed. Legacy isn't just money. Legacy is momentum. Betty didn't live long after the sale. In May 1980, at just 56, she died of a stroke. A short life by years, a long life by consequence. In offices around the world, liquid paper kept doing what she designed it to do, give people a way to fix things without starting over. That is the poetry of this story. She didn't just invent a product. She invented permission. If this sounds like a fairy tale, understand what made it real. She noticed a small thing other people ignored. She tried something obvious no one else dared to try. She kept it quiet until it worked. Then she shared it boldly. She built a product. And then she built a company, and then she built a culture. She sold at the right time and turned profit into purpose. There's a temptation to make liquid paper a metaphor for perfection, as if the point is to hide flaws. That misses the wisdom. Liquid paper is not perfectionism. It's permission. Permission to correct without collapse. Permission to keep going. Permission to fix a single letter without throwing away the page. That's legacy. And if you want one more measure of impact, look at your own life. You fix as you go. You course correct. You paint over the line and keep writing. Whether you learned it from a bottle or a story, you are practicing Betty's philosophy every time you give yourself permission to improve instead of quit. One woman, one idea, one small brush, a world made gentler for mistakes. That's how you change it. If you got value from this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so we can continue this journey together. Thank you for watching.